Hi guys! It's been a long time since I made a booktube video, but that's Mark's fault because he broke his hard drive, so thanks Mark.
Woo!
But, what do I say next? Gotta get the joke lineup ready. I'd make a great stand-up comedian. Today I thought I would film a booktube video because it's been a while, but also I did my makeup today for the first time in like 5 days. I did not do my hair, but that's, you win some, you lose some, you know? You can't do it all, so we took advantage of this. So today's video is a little bit late, but I'm gonna share my favorite books of 2018. I read, I think, 54 books in 2018, which is less than half that I read in 2017. So that's not good, but some books are better than no books. Even though I didn't read as many as I did in 2017, I still read a lot that I liked, which is important. I should be a fan of quality over quantity, but that's not always the case. So I chose, I think, 7 of my favorite books from 2018 that I want to share with you guys. First up on the list is Broccoli. Oh, that's just my shopping list, just kidding. Broccoli is my favorite book. So the first one is Far from the Tree by Robin Benway. This is a book that follows 3 siblings that were all put up for adoption at some point in their life. They had the same mother, but they never knew each other. And so then when they all get to be about teenagers, their parents share with them that they have siblings, and the 3 meet up and they connect, and it kind of explores how, it talks a lot about foster care, but it also talks a lot about how there's different opportunities in the system. Like, one of the children got a really good home, one of them got like an average home, I guess, and then one of them was never adopted out of foster care. So it just shows you the impacts of going through the system that it would have on a child. It's really heartfelt and heart-wrenching because it makes you feel really sad for the characters in the book, but I really recommend it and I enjoyed reading it. Next up on the list is probably my favorite book of 2018. It was Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. She is the author of the series Every Heart a Doorway. She goes by a different name for that series, but that's the same author. And I feel like this book is a lot less well known, but it was so good. It's kind of written documentary style. Oh, I don't really know how to explain it. It's fiction because it centers around these scientists that set out on a voyage to prove that mermaids are real. So, not real, unfortunately. But it kind of reads more like a nonfiction book because it's so scientific and factual and to the point, but it was gripping, terrifying, and just so entertaining. I do not think this book gets enough hype for how good it was. I read it while I was at the beach, so I recommend that. It's about killer mermaids, so you might have a few nightmares, but I loved it. I will probably reread it because it's packed full of so much information that it's hard to actually absorb it all while you're reading it. Third on the list is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. So I'm sure that you've heard about this book because it's super, super popular on BookTube, but it is futuristic, dystopian, or I guess utopian, because the world is perfect. There's no poverty, no death, no destruction, no war. Nothing bad that we have in our society is in this society in the future. But the problem with that is that since nobody dies of natural causes, the population would just keep growing and growing, so they have these things called scythes, which are appointed murderers, basically. So they choose people, each scythe is different, but they choose people based on something, or maybe not based on something, maybe it's random, and they kill them to keep the population at a maintainable level. And it was so, like, one of the best fantasy, is it fantasy?
Sci-fi.
Sci-fi. It was one of the best dystopian, utopian novels that I've read. It's young adult, but it was, I think anybody of any age could read this because it was super entertaining, and I don't know how to describe his writing style, and I've only read this book by him and the sequel to it, Thunderhead, but I can't describe the writing style because it seems like very matter-of-fact, but it's also still really entertaining. So it's just kind of, I guess, simple would be the word. Maybe if you're starting out with fantasy, this would be a good place to start because it wasn't a super hard world to understand because it wasn't crazy different than ours. So that was one of my favorites from this year. Next up is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. It was a phenomenal book. You probably heard people talk about it. Kristen Hanna is a super famous author, and I think I might have read 2 other books by her, but she wrote The Nightingale. And The Great Alone I thought was better than The Nightingale. I know that book has a cult following, but The Great Alone was spectacular. It follows this girl named Lenny during her like formative teenage years, and she's close with both of her parents. It takes place, I think, in the 60s, 70s. Her dad has returned from Vietnam and he has undiagnosed PTSD, and she's an only child, and her father is verbally and physically abusive to her mother, and so she's very close with both of her parents, but she doesn't really know how to reconcile the trauma that resides in her father with the kind man that she sees. So it follows her struggles. They end up moving to Alaska towards the beginning of the book, and it was so atmospheric because Alaska now probably, but also during this time period, was super brutal and a very harsh landscape to grow up in as a teenager. It was very unconventional and different, and there's romance, which is kind of unexpected, but so good. Like, the romance almost seems like a secondary genre to this book, but it was honestly what makes it good. So I really recommend this one. Even if you don't normally like general fiction or women's fiction, I think anybody would enjoy this book. Next up is Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. I read this book in like a day, but it was so good. It's short, very sad. It follows a cast of characters in World War II, and I think the book doesn't take place over a long period of time either, but even though it's short, you really get to know the characters, and the author really makes a point to emphasize some of the more lesser known hardships that people went through in World War II, if that makes any sense. So there are just like little details that she sprinkles in throughout that she mentions them nonchalantly, but it really startles you because it's just traumatic. So this book is very sad, but very good. Almost done. Second to last one is Sadie by Courtney Summers. I think I've talked about this in all the 3 videos that I have on my channel probably, but it was Courtney Summers' debut novel, and it follows 2 sisters, one of them who's been murdered and one of them who's missing. And some of the alternating chapters take place as a podcast that a guy is investigating one of the sisters' murder and disappearance, and it reminds me of Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis. So if you've read that, they both have like that same gritty, dark, suspenseful, violent feel to them. But it was very entertaining and I enjoyed it a lot. Okay, lastly is The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. I read a lot of thrillers last year, which I'm going to try not to do this year for the sake of my mental sanity, because those will get to ya. But I read a lot last year, and The Woman in the Window is probably my favorite because the ending, like, I'll never forget the ending to that book. It shocked me, and I normally don't figure out the endings to books like this. I don't even try because I don't want to know. And the ending to this, I could never have seen coming. So it has like Rear Window vibes to it, if you've ever seen that movie. But it was very entertaining. One of the best thrillers probably that I've read. So I definitely recommend that one. And that's it for my favorite books of 2018. After talking about all these books, I really want to go reread them now because they were really good. So I recommend you check out any of the ones that I talked about. Thanks for watching.